The Emissions Trading Scheme is New Zealand's main way of helping to reduce our emissions and meet our international targets for climate change. The ETS is a market that moves the cost of emissions onto the businesses that cause them. Like any market, the ETS works by putting a price on a product. In the ETS, the product is the ability to emit. The currency we use is New Zealand emission units. Each NZU represents 1 tonne of carbon dioxide, or its equivalent in other greenhouse gases. NZUs are bought and sold between businesses. Emitters must pay NZUs corresponding to the tonnes of carbon dioxide that they are emitting. Foresters can earn NZUs from the government because trees absorb carbon dioxide, removing it from the atmosphere. The foresters can sell those NZUs to emitters, but if the trees are cut down, they must repay the government by giving back NZUs. The price depends on how many emission units are available, supply, and how much businesses want or need to buy the ability to emit, demand. Putting a price on emissions influences how businesses invest in assets and technologies that reduce emissions. Businesses that can't reduce emissions can buy reductions somewhere else in the economy or the world by buying emissions units. Some emitters can pass some or all of the cost of their emissions onto consumers. For example, when we buy petrol, a very small part of the cost goes back to the oil company to help pay for the NZUs that it has to pay to the government. So when there is a surplus of NZUs and prices are low, it makes the costs of emitting low as well. In these circumstances, there is less incentive for us to change our polluting practices. When there is a shortage of NZUs and prices are higher, the costs of emitting are higher too. In these circumstances, we can expect changes such as more electricity generation from renewable sources, or manufacturers to switch from coal to less polluting alternatives, like natural gas. NZU prices have moved up and down in response to changes in supply and demand. At the start, the government wanted to ease emitters into the ETS, so it allowed some participants to pay back only 1 NZU for every 2 tonnes of carbon dioxide. This meant businesses needed fewer NZUs to meet their obligations, so it reduced the demand and the price went down. Over the first few years of the ETS, there were also changes in the supply of units because New Zealand emitters could buy cheaper units from overseas to cover their emissions. They used these units to pay back what they owed, and this meant they didn't need to use their NZUs and were able to save them for later. With the surplus of units in the ETS, NZU prices also dropped. The government decided to stop accepting international units and the price of NZUs started to rise again. Because changes in the price of NZUs can affect the whole economy, the ETS currently has a number of measures in place to control the costs to businesses and households. For example, NZUs can be bought from the government for a fixed price of $25. This acts as a price ceiling for the market. Businesses that are competing with overseas companies, which don't have a price on carbon, qualify for free NZUs gifted by the government so they don't suffer a trade disadvantage. To date, the ETS has helped us meet our international targets for emissions reductions, and we're on track to meet our 2020 target. We have also now set an ambitious target for the emissions reductions we will make by 2030. The ETS will help New Zealanders move to a low emissions future, and the government will regularly review it to ensure it remains fit for purpose. For up-to-date information on the ETS, visit these websites.